Hey there, welcome to the channel. So today I want to take a look at something a little bit different. Okay, so I live in the Southwest. Particularly, I live in San Diego. And I've been reading a lot about how Lake Mead and Lake Powell are very short on water and how we've had this mega drought. So what I did is I wanted to actually look into this and kind of figure out, hey, what's going on with this? What's the deal? Are we going to like run out of water? And it's also very interesting because being in San Diego, kind of we're like getting down to the end of the pipe, like us and then southern parts of Arizona and then, Mexico, like we're the last people on the line. Everyone else is tapping off that water. And so I was kind of thinking like, what the heck's going on with this? So let's take a look at this. First, we're going to take a look at Lake Mead. So Lake Mead, they have this info site, Mead US. I'll put it in the link below. And what's happening is Lake Mead is the one made by the Hoover Dam, which is the dam, maybe half hour outside of Las Vegas. And that's where Las Vegas gets its drinking water, et cetera. And looking at this right now, we can see down here, this 2020 is the lower shaded in region. You can see how low we are. The levels right now are all the way down to about, 1,045 foot level. And you can see how this is very low to all the recent years. So you're looking up at 2021, you were at 1070 at this time, 1078. I mean, all these other years, you had significantly higher levels of water at this time. Now, because we're coming into the summer, the water levels are dropping off because, typically, there's seasonality to it. At this point, a lot of the snowpack in the Colorados has melted and that has made its way down to the river. And now we're getting into that point where the, water is being taken out of it. But we can see that we're really at very, very historic lows. And we're at lows that are starting to cause serious issues for water supply. Now, one of the concepts over here is on this NPS government site. Apparently, Vegas was very smart. And back in 2015, I believe so, they completed this, what they call this third straw. And so what happens is they get like something like 95% of their drinking water. They get it from Lake Mead. And you can see here this diagram from this website that they have an intake pipe at 1,000 foot, another one at 1050. And then when they have the final one down 860 feet. And what has just happened, I believe, reading about this, is that they have just turned on this third pipe. This thing has been activated within, like, let's say the last month. This one is almost being exposed right now. And so they've had to shut off the intake from that. So that's quite an amazing thing. Another thing to keep in mind is the shape of these canyons that make up Lake Mead Reservoir. As you can see here, they're not these perfectly vertical cliffs. Many of these have some kind of a slope to them. And the consequence is that the higher up in elevation that you go, the more water is there. It's like a V shape. So as we're getting lower and lower, it's not quite the same thing. So for example, if we dropped from 1,100 feet to 1,000 foot, losing 100 feet of elevation, that is a lot more water than going from 900 to 800, because down here at these lower levels, the canyons are much more narrow. So that's something to keep in mind. One other thing, asking certain questions here. One of the questions is, at what level does Lake Mead stop producing power? So here we are, I just Googled that up and you can see that at 10,000, we're at 10,050 feet. So we're okay right now. And this is in its Boulder City review, but they're saying that at 950 feet, they're going to have to stop producing power. So that's the first leg of it. Now, if they make it down to 950, well, they're still okay. They're still okay. The straw's got another little bit of, another 90 feet to go before this straw becomes exposed and Las Vegas is totally out of water. So So they're okay there, except that they get a lot of power. I'm not sure what the number is, but it's significant amount of power comes from that generation. If you shut that down, it's going to be a big problem. Now, the next thing I wanted to look at was, at what level does Lake Mead stop providing water downstream? And here we go from this Las Vegas, blah, blah, blah.com. And it's called a dead pool. So Lake Mead would reach dead pool if the water drops below 895 feet, said Patty Aaron, Public Affairs. Now, 895 feet. So it's kind of interesting. See how the 895 feet, see the way they've designed this? So at 895 feet, which is a little bit above this 860, they're going to still suck all this water out, but they're going to be at dead pool. And what that means, and this is my understanding, is means that they're not going to send water downstream. They have a pool of water and they don't have any outtake or intake or any way to pass water through downstream. So what that means is the entire river below that dam, there's going to be no water in it at that level. So that's a kind of critical thing. And I don't know what they would do if they have some way of like, okay, we can try to open up bypass pipes that have been closed since the building of the dam or whatever. Who knows? But it's kind of a catastrophic thing. It really, really is. And so now the question is like, okay, so I live in the Southwest. I live in San Diego. Now we get some of our water. We do have some desalination and stuff, but most of our water is like everyone else. We're getting it from Northern California, and a lot of the water is really coming from that Colorado. I mean, we're getting it from Northern, but a lot of that is, really sourced from Colorado and Colorado related, river related things. So, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking to myself, well, holy crap, the rate that this is dropping. So if we go back to this one here, and we do have to be careful on the rate of it, but just looking how far we're below, that we really need some kind of miracle pretty soon, because we're getting to that point where you're going to get below 1,000 foot and you're going to start to have all these cascade effects. Look, if Las Vegas runs out of water, and what are they going to do? I mean, you're literally not going to be able to shower and have water. So what are you going to do with the trillions of dollars of real estate? I mean, it's going to become unlivable. So the next thing I wanted to look at was the value of the real estate in some of these states. Now, I could have gone through and got the value of, all the states in the South, but I just kind of picked California, Arizona, Nevada. Now, what I did is, because you have Northern California and Southern California and kind of different water situations. So what I did is I just took your one unit, your single unit, detached and attached, and I'm going to try to figure out what the value is based on the median home price. And then what I did is, so for California, I just took half the real estate. I said Southern California versus Northern. I took half. That's probably not correct, right? And also, I just picked the median home price, which is probably not correct. Like in Nevada, I think the median here was actually just for the Vegas area, which is probably much higher than other parts. So it's not totally accurate, but basically still, it's going to give us a ballpark kind of idea of what the value currently of the real estate is in these states that are affected by this drought that we're going through. And if you do the math, you find like in Southern California, you got 3 trillion, that's trillion, 0.6 trillion and 0.2 trillion. I mean, you add that all up, and you're talking about $4 trillion worth of real estate. So this is a really interesting thing, because if you look at it and you say, just take Nevada, just take this as Las Vegas. Okay, so yes, there's more here than just Las Vegas, but approximately $205 million worth of real estate could be basically made worthless if that third straw in the water system for Lake Mead becomes exposed. I mean, think about it. It's like you have a beautiful home that you don't have any water, literally don't have any water. You can't take showers and you can't drink water. It's like, it's a big mess. It's similar for Arizona. And then California is the big daddy of the thing at 3.2 trillion worth of real estate. So this is sort of really one of the things that I'm looking at. I'm looking at it and saying, well, how much is that house that I have? How much is this thing worth? Like, I look at it and I say, look, I'm in California, and I can tell you, like, California is a high beta housing market, which means that it goes up and down a lot, and it moves, and it's very inflated. And part of the reason for that is because our property taxes are actually very low. The reality is, in many parts of the country, you might have a mill rate of 4 or something like that. And in the end, that ends up being like 4% of the value. And they also keep moving the value around. California, we still at this time have Prop 13, which limits the increase in the assessment on the property. So that means, I bought my house about 10 years ago. And so the value that I'm paying taxes on is only gone up 1% a year. That's the most it can go up. And I can only pay approximately 1% on that. Now there's some extra Belarus and whatever, but rarely does it go over 2% total. So because of that stability of the taxes, the house, the other variable is the price. So that's why the price of California real estate goes up a lot. So the point is, this 4 trillion in real estate is worth nothing if you're sitting there and you're literally going to have to use an outhouse. I mean, it's even worse, worth less than that. I mean, because if you don't have water, you're screwed. So that's another way of looking at this. This is really, I mean, normally I wouldn't be so alarmist, but just looking at the data and kind of trying to research this right now, I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And therefore, down in San Diego, we really have the same problem. We have the same kind of issue, because all these different parts are, all these different states and parts of the states in the Southwest all get water from, basically the Colorado River Basin. And the situation is that, it's getting pretty desperate. That's really what this is. That's what I'm seeing. And so I'm starting to think, man, I might need to sell my house now and move, because I mean, I don't really want to. I know we have an economic doomsday coming up right now, but on the other hand, I'm like, I don't really want to do anything, but it looks like I might have to. So let's go look at a little longer term chart. So what I did over here is I grabbed the data from the website. So they basically have the data where you can chart all the data they have. So going back to Lake Mead, you can see here's the elevation. So you can see way back here, this is 1936. So you can see how, and this is the average elevation on a yearly basis, right? So you can see how they were filling it up back in the late 30s. And you can see peak level at that time was about 1,200 feet. Now, what's very interesting is like, if we're looking at this, they kind of filled it up to this about 1,200 level. We've had some drop offs. It's interesting, right? You've had some pretty lean years here where it really dropped off, but it recovered really quickly. And then we had the levels really come up all the way into beyond this 1,200 foot level. And now we've just been on this decline here, and we're at something like that right now. And this is the average for the year. So it's incomplete. We're actually lower than that right now. So a couple things, I guess, the issue is this is in about 2000. This is about this period of time is 1984, 84, 2000. So one of the questions I think is like, okay, hedging my bets here, like, okay, are we in a situation where we can get a recovery here? Or are we in a situation where we're getting this global climate change kind of situation where we're becoming a more arid environment, and, it's in the West, and therefore there's just going to be less water all over? It's kind of like, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I think it's very interesting. See, you can make the argument back here, if just looking at water levels. Now there's probably some other technical factors here, because the levels in this lake are, they can kind of make decisions about how much they put in, how much they take out, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of decision making that they can do. But it's interesting from here, this low in 66 going up. I mean, they really kind of spent many decades there, all the way into the 80s. It was filling up. So actually this period of time must have been pretty good for water, right? Kind of interesting. And then if trying to look for a comparable time, we peaked out here in about 2000. We're at 2020. We're in this slide. Okay. Another period here after they just filled it about looks like 42, they did kind of slide all the way down to like the 50s. So I wonder if this is, and that would be like a 15-year period, but then they have these big bumps. So I think there's something artificial going on here. This wouldn't, it's possible. This is unlikely. They transferred water somewhere else to bring it in to bring the level up. But it could be possible that we're seeing at back here in this time, the 40s, we're seeing some kind of a big move where the water levels were dropping. However, in what's interesting is the starting point is higher over here, and it's been dropping since 2000. So it's over 20 years right now. So it doesn't look good. It's just a question of will something change? Now, looking at Lake Powell, that's another part of this big system. So here's the min-max levels, and going back to 63, you see how they filled it up. And yeah, we've been on the decline as well over here, not as bad. But you can see we kind of peaked out again in 2000, and we've been on the decline ever since. More volatility for sure, but we've been in the decline. So I think I was looking at all this and saying to myself, geez, think about it. I have a condo, and it's like, okay, it's a nice condo. It's worth something right now. I have several problems. I know we're going into recession. That's one big problem. The question is, we know the housing is overvalued. It'll come off. To what extent, I don't know. I've been here before through the last great financial crisis. So, yeah, it could come off significantly. But on the other hand, it could still hold on to a decent amount of value just where I'm at. So it might not be that bad. But then looking at the water situation, it's like, okay, you're looking at the average price, like in my area, it might be over 800,000. A million. I mean, $1 million homes everywhere. And you're just looking at it saying to yourself, like, look, if these water levels keep dropping off, I mean, this, like, if you get to, like, the watershed moment may very well be Las Vegas. If Las Vegas actually gets to that point where they have to stop, they don't get water anymore. I mean, there's no solution to that. There's no solution. And we're really right at that point. I mean, we need a really strong, so we basically need, and we're already screwed, right? This time of the year, I mean, Arizona, I think they'll have some monsoon stuff, but like in terms of, like, we really have to wait for the winter snowpack. In California, we get some winter storms some years, so we really have to wait for that to happen to see what happens. But this trend is just not good, and unfortunately, I think I need to move.